I think they mute me.
Tomoko, good evening.
Hello.
We're having so much fun and we miss you, but hopefully next time we'll all get together and have a big party on the dais. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good evening, everybody. I call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. and welcome. Oh. For the audience here tonight, the City of Glendora utilizes a hybrid meeting format to allow for participation both in person and virtually. In consideration of others and the business conducted tonight, please silence your phones and any electronic devices and refrain from speaking unless recognized. Again, this is a public meeting for the community of Glendora. We appreciate and respect your participation here this evening. Madam Clerk, would you like to conduct the roll call?
Yes, thank you, President. At this time, I will conduct an oral roll call and request that each trustee respond with the word present when their name is called. Trustee Flowers,
Present.
Trustee Johnson, Trustee Tolan. Oh, did we lose it?
Present.
Perfect, thank you. Vice President Landman,
Present.
President Chu.
Present.
Let the record show all members are present. Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to convene for a closed session.
You'll read out first what the closed session is. So number one. Or read for the record.
Yeah, okay. We have a closed session for agenda item number 1, which is public employee performance evaluation. Do I read the rest of that? Yes. Okay. A closed session will be held pursuant to Government Code 54957 to discuss evaluation of the position of the library director in consultation with the city manager. And do I need to announce a time?
No, first what we'll do is we'll invite for public comments. That way, if anybody's.
All right. So I would like to open up public comment.
Other comments relating to the closed session
Session items only. Is there any requests on Zoom or in person?
We have no cards and I am not seeing anyone on Zoom, as well as I do not have any emails, so we are good.
Okay, so I would like to convene the meeting into closed session at 7:02 p.m. Okay. Do I need to announce the time that we can? Okay. It's now 8:12 and the board has come back from closed session where we had a privileged and confidential conversation pursuant of code 54957, and there are no reportable actions. And now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Erica?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So now does anyone wish to reorder or add to the agenda? Seeing no one, we will move on to public comment. So I invite members of the public to address the library board. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking once on both on and off agenda items. All questions should be directed through the presiding officer. This is your time to speak uninterrupted. If you are in attendance, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording admin before the close of the public comment period. Once recognized, speakers should advance to the podium, state your name and the subject matter you wish to discuss. If you're participating via Zoom, select the raise hand icon in Zoom before the close of the public comment period. Once recognized, you will be unmuted, state your name and the subject matter you wish to discuss. Now I invite those in attendance who have public comment cards to speak.
We have no cards and I am seeing no one on Zoom, as well as there are no emails that have come in.
Got it. Okay, so now I will close the public comment period and move on to board statements and reports. Do any of the trustees have reports or announcements? Trustee Flowers?
Thank you, ma'am. Just to say Happy New Year. It's our first session since December, or actually November 2022. I also want to wish a happy Lunar New Year to the folks who still celebrate. And in light of the news which has happened in our recent local community, it's always a great reminder that within our library family, the staff and our patrons, that we come together as a community also, and all of our hearts break at any type of tragic news which affects folks. And just a reminder for our patrons, please keep supporting the library and all its outstanding work. Secondly, I know that there are happenings with the Library Foundation, and a book sale is going on. I believe Director Stone is at this week coming up, if you recall. Was it last week? Well, there was a book sale last week at the foundation upstairs, and it's important to support these initiatives because it supports the Glendora Public Library. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we will now move on to director staff. Agenda item number 2, which is reports of the library director and library divisions. Director Stone?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. It's great to be back with you all. As usual, in the packet, which is available to the public online, there is a full report of actually covering a couple of different months since we had no meeting in December, a report from the library director and divisions. And I have only a couple of updates to that written report. One of them is I am happy to say that we have someone who has accepted our senior library technician position and is scheduled to start on February 6th. That is one of our full-time jobs. So that is a great going to be a great addition to the staff, and you'll learn more as we go forward, but happy to update you on that. And also I know we'll be talking more about statistics and metrics as we go along this evening, but I did want to mention, since the monthly reports also include a statistical summary, I wanted to point out something about some of the decreases that you see in the bottom lines. A couple of the major statistics, those are based on, are the highly fluctuating Wi-Fi users, which I know we've explained in the past. We are trying to pin down with IT why there is such a fluctuation in the Wi-Fi usage. That can certainly impact, since it can be those numbers themselves are some of the largest numbers. A fluctuation there can really impact kind of our bottom line, the bottom lines that you see on those statistics summary sheets. The other thing that can affect that is our social media presence. And I did want to reassure you that if you look at the detailed statistics, there is a lot of social media posting going on. But as I know, we have updated you over the last months, that changes in how the algorithms work and how the social media platforms process those posts are impacting the reach that they get. So it's not that the city is sort of ignoring the library in its social media efforts, if you look at the number of posts, but a drop in those reached is also can be a large number that impacts those bottom lines. So I just wanted to point that out separately from the mid-year metrics report that we'll have later for you tonight. Those are my only updates to what's in the packet. I am happy to answer any questions I can, if there are any.
Does anybody have questions or comments? No? Okay, I do have one comment. I would like to thank Janet for her 15 years of service thus far for the library, as well as Rebecca for 20 years. And then also I didn't get to say goodbye to Elvia, but we also thank her for always helping us out with our meetings as well. And I also did have one other question in the on page. There was something about, or maybe that goes on to agenda item number 3. So I'll wait. Okay. So no one else. Okay, so moving on to special items, agenda item number 3, library goals, metrics, and budget update. Director Stone.
Thank you again. For anyone watching, just to confirm that in the packet, again, that's available in its entirety online, there are reports mid-year on how we are doing on the goals that are in the 2-year budget document, that show our half-year report of the detailed metrics that underlie the statistics summary that the board gets every month, and also there's a half-year snapshot of how we are doing with our budget line items. So those actual data are in the packet, and what we're going to do is rather than pull those up on the screen and talk through the documents, we're just going to give you an update on those, sort of synthesized with some of the highlights that we think are represented by those reports, so we can point out what we think is important about them. Next slide, please. Oh, oops. It's not, it's not a, oh, okay. So, so let's see. So next slide, please. Before we get into the highlights here, I did want to just say thank you to the Glendora Public Library Friends Foundation. We're very fortunate in their support. If you look at the monthly director and division reports, we highlight in there the specific objectives and programs that have been funded by them. We have not done that here, but you can get that information very easily from the director and division reports. I still do want to say thank you to them because their impact is throughout all the objectives and goals that you'll be hearing about tonight, actually through the metrics and the monetary conversations as well. So just hats off. We're very grateful that you're around. Next slide, please. So the document that's in the budget, the raw document itself is structured as it is in the budget document. It's by the library's current divisions. And so what we've done is taken those goals that are in the budget document and put them in terms of our strategic framework, just to give you a different perspective on how those goals are serving the responsibilities of the library in fulfilling the needs of the community. So first of all, we're going to start with what we call our proximity services. This is our responsibility to bring the world of ideas geographically closer to our population. Next slide, please. And we have a few different things here. First of all, the gathering space is one of our key ways that we provide access to the world of ideas in terms of proximity. And one of some of our objectives have to do with this the citywide evaluation of city facility needs. And in the darker blue banner there at the top, what you're seeing in each of these slides there, when there is a reference to the city strategic plan, we have inserted that. Not all of them have that direct correlation, but in this case, the city strategic plan does have an evaluation of the city's facility needs. And some of the highlights so far this fiscal year that have to do with that are that the city on the citywide side, the condition assessment, the city staff have been evaluating proposals for the condition assessment of the city's facilities, and they anticipate completion of that assessment by March of 2023. This says that was as reported to council in August, and I did double check that against the current update that's going to council tomorrow night and is already on the website, and that is still stands, that they expect that assessment by March of this year. So we'll be seeing some interesting things about the city's facilities across the board. Now, in particular to the library building, this fiscal year, we have had a contract awarded by City Council just earlier this month to assess the library building. And this assessment will include space utilization, mapping, shelving footprints, building code assessments, and we expect, in addition to structural and engineering assessments, and that report is anticipated in April of this year. And obviously we'll have lots more to talk about when we find out how this library structure fares in that assessment. Next slide, please. So more in terms of getting the world of ideas near to our population. Another one is in terms of the content for the public, and we want to make sure there are no barriers to people coming to use our content. So among the things we look at are the fees that we charge. And the city is undergoing a comprehensive fee study. As one of the things we've done as something that you have contributed to, which is the recommending the discontinuation of overdue fees that will be going to the city council. And if they approve that as part of the overdue fines and master schedule of fees, that would go into effect on July 1st, pending their approval. So that's a big step if it goes forward in terms of, removing barriers to access to the content for the public. And then on the fee side for the city, since I did mention that there was a citywide study, they are planning to look into that after some of the enterprise resource planning, otherwise known as ERP system. That's this kind of the citywide multi-module computer system. And after some of the beginning elements of that are implemented, then they'll start looking at the fees. Next slide, please. So back to our gathering space. One of the things on the city's citywide strategic plan is to train city staff, and that had been updated to include safety training. So we wanted to report out a little bit and just share that we shared some of our own training resources with Public Works in the course of the first part of this fiscal year. And also just proud to report that we had the highest percentage of participants when the city did some Preparedness Month activities. I'm really proud that we were highly engaged in the city's safety processes. Next slide, please. A little bit more about the gathering space. Another couple of city initiatives were space planning and the needs assessments for city facilities. And some of the things we contributed to along those lines included some of the making the main floor more mobile. We did install our new mobile service desk in July. And the library staff has continued working with furniture wholesalers, with Public Works, with information systems and finance to also look at the next steps of mobile shelving and some more private meeting spaces there on that main floor. Next slide, please. So another aspect of bringing the world of ideas nearby is access to the networked and technological world. And one of the objectives here was regarded our new self-check machines and our library document station. So we are continuing to engage customers to promote use of the self-checks. And you can see that the use of those as percentage of checkouts is rising. The library document station has also been installed in the first part of this fiscal year. And we're looking at promotional campaigns for that as well. Next slide, please. So moving on to another of the library's responsibilities to the community. The community needs to participate in the world of ideas through all stages of life. So we have some human development services. Next slide, please. And among the objectives that we proposed to the city that we're reporting out on included creating social connections and exploring the world of ideas both virtually and in person. And a couple of things that have moved forward in the first part of the fiscal year include the Teen Idea Lab, which was launched in November, and the Winter Discovery Challenge that is running December through January. And through those, teens and participants of all ages will seek solutions to real world issues, learn skills such as leadership and teamwork, and also improve reading skills and habits. Next slide, please. Okay, the public also needs to be able to access the world of ideas regardless of physiological and neurological aspect of their being. So we provide accessible services. Next slide, please. And one of our targets in this realm was to implement a special, what's called sensory story time. And here to talk about that with you a little bit is librarian 2, Rebecca Simjian.
Thank you so much. Sensory story time is our focus. We focus on a neurodiverse group of families and caregivers. The goal of sensory story time is to encourage children to use one or more of their senses, including sight, sound, touch, and movement to enhance developmental benefits. Sensory story time is an educational interactive program that can be enjoyed by all children, but especially designed for a neurodiverse audience. The program supports accessibility, and it encourages early literacy and reaching developmental milestones. We meet on Monday evenings from 6:30 to 7:15. We do ask that attendees, families, and caregivers, we request that they pre-register and the group is settling in, and they're really benefiting from this special service, and it's unique. And we would encourage the board to, I don't know if you can visit, but we'll report back to you as we move along. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the world of ideas, the data themselves do need ways of continued and enduring access as their containers decay and technologies change. Next slide, please. So we do offer some preservation services. One of our targets this year has been to preserve, or during this budget, I should say, is to preserve and to make available for public use materials of local historical significance. And some of the steps we've taken so far this fiscal year is that we are evaluating the criteria with which to evaluate possible vendors to digitize our local content. We do have funding from the foundation to launch this digitization project, and to do it responsibly, we need to make sure we know exactly what we're asking of these vendors and how to compare their services as we evaluate them. So that's what's underway right now. Next slide, please. Okay, information not only decays, but it just gets more chaotic. Some people would say it's kind of the same thing, but we do help organize all of that chaotic information. Next slide, please. And one of the ways that we have done that is by contributing to a citywide strategic plan initiative on the administrative manual policy update. As of August, the city had conducted a final review of the current policies associated with the departments, and the update more recently is that is expected to go to the city manager for feedback next month. That's the update that's going to council next month. And then, tomorrow night. And then what we have done in the course of that is we've provided some assistance regarding organizational structure, including section descriptions and policy definitions. That's one of the things that, is a longstanding tradition of library services is sort of controlled vocabulary and the organization of data. I mean, that's what Dewey Decimal and subject headings are. So we offered some assistance with that in terms of that project. Next slide, please. Other ways of organizing the world of ideas. Just wanted to report out that our app has had over 37,000 page views as of the end of December this year. So we hope that will just continue to gain momentum. Next slide, please. So the ideas are subject to perspective, are subject to information and disinformation. And so another service that we provide is in terms of interpretation and context, helping people understand the accuracy and perception and influence of information. Next slide, please. And in terms of providing accurate data, the city has a strategic plan element on conducting elections, and to help provide accurate data about those, we set up this library's adaptable resource center. It's a computer sponsored by the Friends Foundation, and that was set up with authoritative election links from the city of Glendora and from Cal Matters, so that people could be sure that they were getting accurate information before they cast their votes. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about accuracy of data. The city conducts a community survey every couple of years or so. And the results were shared with City Council in October. And the complete report is available on the city's website. The results of that survey will assist with the city's next strategic plan, which they'll be working on, we'll all be working on in the next couple of months. And the reason I put this on here is that the library director has participated in the helping formulate that survey for the last several go rounds. And it does help the city understand the actual standing of its services out in the community. And that kind of data collection is definitely right up the library's alley. Next slide, please. In terms of biases and debunking that go along with the contextualizing the world of ideas, one of our objectives has been to create social connections and explore the world of ideas both virtually and in person. And one of the new ways that we're offering that is the Thought Leaders online lecture series. They are not all the lectures are involved in biases and debunking, but certainly some of them are. This series connects people with the ideas from experts and popular authors. Some of the topics include leadership, difficult conversations about race, parenting, productivity, fictional authors, and we have over 800 views of that as of the end of December. Next slide, please. So a little bit more in terms of providing context to the world of ideas. One of our objectives is to learn best practices or help the community learn best practices in evaluating the reliability of information. And there are a variety of ways that we have done this. There have been presentations made by library staff at the Lafayette Trust Center Health Fair and at Tri-Community Adult Education Showcase that help people understand how to find accurate and authoritative information. Next slide, please. I'd like to wrap up with one aspect or two that I think touch all the community opportunities. Next slide, please. And one of these is this idea of effectively organizing and compensating staff. The city's strategic plan has a library department classification and compensation review. And I'm happy to report that agreement has been awarded to CPSHR to conduct that classification study. So that will be kicking off very soon, probably by the end of the month, I expect. And the steps that are included in that in the citywide strategic plan, or the elements, mean that we'll be moving away from some of the traditional organizations of, adult youth frontline support staff. We will be looking at comparing existing and envisioned job descriptions, benchmarking against other agencies and other employees with similar education, meeting and conferring with employee groups, and then eventually taking that to city council. So we have a few months of work ahead of us, obviously, with that, but it is happy to report that so far this fiscal year, we have awarded that contract. That concludes the portion about our objectives. And before we move on to the next part, I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Does anybody have questions? Nope. You can move on.
Thank you. Couple of slides forward, please. And it's the same presentation. Yeah. Yeah. And coming up to the podium is Library Services Manager Cindy Romero to talk about the metrics report.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick update on the last 6 months of our statistics. Can we go on to the next one, please? Oops, next one. Next one. So a couple of things that have impacted our statistics over the last 6 months. Of course, we've been seeing a rise in our customers using their own devices. Over the past, I've been here 18 years. And over that time, we've really seen a decrease in the use of our public computers and an increase in our Wi-Fi use and people using their own devices. So that really has impacted a lot of our statistics. Our new self-check machines are certainly much easier to use than the old ones. So that's had a big impact. The new self-service library document station. And with both of those, some of it is just the familiarity of everyone getting used to being able to check out by themselves. I mean, even just at the grocery stores, we're seeing a lot more self-service and people more willing to take advantage of those opportunities. We're continuing to right size our physical collection based on the community needs. We've got our brand new parks passes that we've had since May. So that's something new in our statistics. The increased volunteer age requirement. In the past, it had been 10 years old was when our youth could start volunteering with us during the summer. And that has increased based on consultation with administrative services and risk management to 12. So that has changed the statistics a little bit. And of course, then, as Janet had mentioned before, the social media outlets are not reporting their statistics in the same way. We just can't get the same statistics that we could a couple of years ago. And so that's changed how those statistics come out. If we can go on to the next slide.
So a couple of things to note, some of our highlights in the last 6 months. So as our library visits continue to rise post closures, we've noticed a few things. You'll see that our library card holders, our membership has gone up in the past 6 months. It actually hasn't. When we did the upgrade to the computers, that process kind of got lost. So one of the benefits of taking a look at our statistics every couple of months is we spot these things. So we are working with the vendor right now to rectify that. So that one isn't a thing. The Wi-Fi use continues to rise, as we've talked about before. Self-check use continues to go up. Our meeting room attendance is rising considerably, and our study room use also continues to grow. So people are really they're using the facility. They're coming in and using the library, which is great. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Our overall items loaned remains constant. However, we're seeing a shift in the ratios to a greater use of electronic materials. Especially during the pandemic, people got used to using their tablets, their Kindles, their phones. I personally hate reading a print book anymore. I know, don't shoot the librarian, I'm sorry. But I'm not the only one. So we're starting to see a shift in people that like to read electronically. Our interlibrary loan requests are currently being treated as requests for purchase rather than us asking other libraries for them due to staffing vacancies. Our items owned is growing, but most of that growth is on our electronic circulating collection. So the physical collection is still being right-sized down to where it really should be for a library our size and use, but our electronic collection continues to grow. Our titles added, especially in December, same thing as the items owned, is considerably higher than it had been because of a large order of electronic materials. And then we're seeing a significant reduction in the number of items mended as we're changing some of those procedures away from repairing items. And then if we really need to have that book, purchasing a new item, it actually costs us less than it costs in the staff time to fix a book, to just order a new one. So we're changing those procedures a little bit. Next slide, please. Our overall program increase is largely reflective of that online expert speaker series that Janet was just talking about, and an increased number of story times to meet demands. So Rebecca spoke earlier about our sensory story time that happens each week. We also have 4 other more traditional story times each week, and once a month, a special story time. So with that, we're seeing an increase that and the speaker series that's 3-ish a month, an increase in the overall number of programs that are being offered. Sorry. Our expert speakers series attendance, those statistics only became available in November for us. We're seeing a number of live views, so we can track the number of people that are actually watching them at the time that they're recorded. And then we can track the number of archive views within 1 month. Now those 2 requirements are what the state library gives us that we can report to the state. That larger number that Janet mentioned earlier, that 837 up and through December, that's actually overall. So that's not just, the views that happened in a month. We're seeing an increase in volunteers, specifically our youth volunteers. We've got a very consistent scheduling and recruiting process with our youth volunteer coordinator, seeking out opportunities for those teens to engage. They've been working with our Winter Discovery Challenge. They've been working with the In and Out program that we had in the fall, and Homework Buddies has returned. I know one person in particular is really happy about that. And so that has returned twice a week. And so that's also, we've seen an increase in volunteers due to that. Next slide, please. And if there's any questions about the statistics, I'm happy to answer those.
Anybody? No?
Go sit back down then.
All right. And now we go back to Janet. Or-
Thank you. Yes,
now-
for the budget section, I will turn the microphone over to Management Analyst Elke Cathell.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Good evening, everyone. In your packet, you have our library expenditure report, which is current through the first 6 months of this year. And I'm just going to go highlight some things in general about the report, and then we'll kind of go through it in detail. Next slide, please. Okay, so in December of 2022, we did a mid-year review of the fiscal year budget 2023, and that was submitted to our administrative services. This mid-year review included fiscal components of our current year budget as well as projections for the next 5 years, and it will be presented to City Council in February of 2023. Our 2-year budget process, which is going to be for fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25, is going to begin in March of this year. We have lots of budget fun all the time. Next slide, please. So just a few things to note in general for this report. If you look at the account numbers 41,000 to 42,000 range, PERS, PARS, and benefits, all those numbers reflect full and part-time vacancies throughout the entire library organization. Temporary in lieu of perm, those are expenditures that we have from contract employees that we've brought in to assist us during our vacancies. The temporary contract staff is actually being charged to 2 different divisions, support services and adult services, as they are helping in both areas at this time. That's a little bit of a change. It used to be only adult services, but they are actually helping out in both areas now, which is fantastic for us. Also, the 229 grant accounts budget adjustments have not been made yet. So when you're looking at this report and you look in the back and you see 229, and all the zeros that are budgeted there, those adjustments have not been reflected yet. So those will be coming in the probably pretty soon. We did provide numbers to them, so we should see those shortly. Next slide, please. So as we look through the report, the administration section and the development section, the vehicle allowance, flex benefits, workers' comp, PERS and PARS are all outside of our control. That's not anything that we even calculate. That's something that administrative services handles for us. And it's just a number that they provide through their calculations. Office supplies reflect reduced traffic and fewer staff. You'll see that we're in general just using less supplies overall. The building materials line item reflects reduced traffic, shortages of supply availability. We are still dealing with that after COVID, impact of staff vacancies. And we actually have items that we purchased last fiscal year that were paid last fiscal year that we're still utilizing this year. So in general, we are just buying less supplies overall. If you look at our printing line items, we're actually making use of a lot more of the social media and constant contact. So we're sending out a lot more via email, and we're actually just in general printing less. We find that social media is pretty useful for us. There are some areas where we're still printing, but we are using social media a lot more. Next slide, please. So our bank charges, you'll see there has been no movement on our bank charges at all. This is actually for our e-commerce, and we are still working on implementation for that, so that hopefully will be coming soon. Training and education line items is reflective of our staff vacancies. We just have less staff, and so there's less people taking advantage of opportunities for training. Our electricity costs, as you may see at your home too, that particular line item reflects increased costs for electricity in general. We have proposed an adjustment mid-year because I'm not sure that there's enough budgeted for this fiscal year. And then our gas charges, if you look at our gas utility charges, our boiler had been turned off as it was not running, but it has been repaired, and we are running it at this time, but we're only running it during open hours. So it's not running when the library is not open. We turn it on at night, in the morning, and we turn it off at night. So we want to make sure it keeps running. Contract services, if you look at that particular line item, some e-library invoices come actually at the end of the year. And so that's why it's a little higher than you would expect at the 6-month point. Our uniform and laundry line item, you actually will see a decrease in that shortly, as we just recently got our new jackets. Very excited about these. So you will see a decrease in that particular line item. And next slide, please. So when you look to our next division, support services, In our division supplies, again, like I mentioned before, reduced traffic and there's actually less items being repaired. So there's in general just less items being purchased. Let's see, and our trust fund, the trust fund reflects actually two donations that we received. Now, these donations are checks that are specifically made out to the library. And so we will take those and deposit those into our trust fund. And we also have one expenditure out of this account. And next slide, please. So for our adult and youth services, if you look at those particular line items, there are certain things that we have not purchased, such as the manipulatives in the children's room. We have not brought those back out for the kids to use puzzles and those things. So we have not needed to replace those items. Those are usually items that we frequently need to replace as kids play with them and we lose pieces or, you know, whatever kids do with those. What's that? They eat them. Yeah, Cindy says they eat them, whatever they do. So they do normally need to be replaced, but because we don't have those out yet, obviously we don't need to replace those yet. Crayons and colored pencils that we have for self-directed coloring, they were actually purchased at the end of last fiscal year, so there has been no need to replace those yet this year. And if you look at our adult services line item, the adult content for the public is largely spent due to electronic resource subscription payment timing. So it all is a matter of when those invoices come in, when they are paid, and a lot of those do come in at the beginning of the fiscal year. And that's why you see that particular line item a little lower than one would anticipate at the 6-month mark. And next slide, please. And happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Anybody have questions about the budget? No? So for the trust fund, so the two donations, so those have nothing to do with the Friends Foundation.
Correct. And that's why I said those were specifically made out to the library. Anything to the foundation is made out to the foundation. But when we receive checks that are specifically made out to the library, then those are deposited into the trust fund.
And
Yeah.
then what do we use those funds towards?
It could be a variety of things. Sometimes it's special material for the collection. Sometimes it's actually material for the building itself. So it's something that we evaluate and look where the need is. And then we, depending on what the cost is and you know, if we see that maybe in our regular budgeted items, we don't have the funds, then we would potentially use a trust fund. It's more for special items. It's not something that we would regularly
So
buy.
we don't dabble into that often at
No.
all or touch it at all.
No, not really.
Bro. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Cindy. Yes. So there is, depending on what the donation is, some of the donations that do come in are targeted. There's one, I believe, that's specific for children's items. Yeah, but a lot of them are general, but we do have a few that are specific. Thank you, Cindy.
And do we ever advertise that people can donate to the library itself?
No,
Okay.
no.
So really, because of the Friends Foundation's, because of their efforts
Right.
in fundraising,
Right.
we do not solicit these donations, but occasionally there are people who, when they ask us about donating and we ask, is your intent to go through our foundation or to
Yes.
donate directly to
I
us?
see, I see.
They say, no, I really want this to go to the city. Most people are actually end up donating to the foundation
Right.
instead, but there are some who want it to go directly to the city. And that's what this trust fund is for, is to hold those funds.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's
and we
not
do-
something that we're going out to seek,
Right,
because that's
okay.
what the foundation does.
Yeah.
And we do
Okay.
clarify, we do usually clarify if that is what they meant to do is donate to the library
Mhm.
when we get those checks.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's great to know. Thank you. And is that it for this item? Do you have anything else to present, Janet?
If there are no questions about any of those portions, I just want to thank the staff who are here and say it's been a good half year so far, and we'll report out at the end of the fiscal year as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so now we will move on to the consent calendar. No worries. Okay, so consent calendar items number 4 through 6. Items on the consent calendar will be enacted by one motion without individual discussion unless a board member has requested it to be removed for separate discussion. Does anyone wish to pull or comment on any of the consent calendar items? Okay, no requests have been received. We will receive and file that. Or
Request a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay.
So we need a motion and a second.
I would like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So seconded.
Perfect. So we have a motion by Vice President Landman and seconded by Trustee Flowers. I will now conduct an oral roll call vote. Trustee Flowers?
Aye.
Trustee Johnson? Trustee Tolan?
Aye.
Perfect, thank you. Vice President Landman?
aye.
President Chu?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now moving on to agenda item number 7, discussion of the 50th anniversary of the current facility for the Glendora Public Library as requested by Landman and Chu. Director Stone.
Oh, welcome back to our, to our 50th anniversary of the building. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. So this is a very familiar item, so I will just give us a few reminders of its background. The library building, not the library as of service, but the library building turned 50 last February, and we have had some goals for our celebration. Among them are that our community will be reintroduced to the brick and mortar library as a hub for information, entertainment, and connection. Next slide, please. And also that the community will gain a greater understanding of the role of the library building, its challenges and needs, and ways that they can help develop its future. We had some other goals as well. We try to mention a different couple of them every time we gather. Next slide, please. There are several things that have guided our approach through this whole year of celebrations. We have made sure, of course, to comply with the Brown Act, to have continuing guidance for the Board of Library Trustees from Library Management and Administration, respect the time of the city's media specialists who are always so great and creative and supportive of us. Recognize that there are official and unofficial messaging outlets and what the roles are of each of those. And of course, direct contribution to the goals that were listed earlier. We have updated the next slide, please, to reflect that we did get our grant monies appropriated by council. So these are the approved funds for fiscal year 2023, which the anniversaries sort of started in February and the fiscal year rolled over a few months later. So this is it's not quite a rollover because we did redistribute some of the allotments, but this is basically the budget that we've been working with. Thanks, as always, to the Friends Foundation for their generosity. Next slide, please. And then as in terms of some of the things on the library side that we've been up to since we last spoke, one is that there was a banner that we had hanging on one of the towers, and it was a great part of our celebration on the plaza in February. And, you know, that was predicted to have a limited lifespan, but it lasted longer than we thought. So we did remove that and replace that with, excuse me, a career pathways online resources banner. And now we're very happy to actually have a new place to advertise that we weren't using before. So that's one different outcome of this whole venture. A couple of other things are that we have done scavenger hunt inside the library using QR codes to educate the public about our electronic resources. And if they play through that activity and let staff know, they can collect a limited edition lanyard. So we've had over 100 of those given away as part of the celebration. And finally, at least on the staff side, before I turn it over to the trustees for the reports and discussion, we had been planning 3 different displays on the main floor, but because of staffing constraints, we simply do not actually have that full committee on that side anymore. So we have decided to forego the last of those 3, or at least postpone it for a while, the last of those 3 displays. But we did do the ones that focused on the past and the present of the library building. So with that, I will turn it over to any trustees who have reports on activities and for any further discussion. The next slide just reminds us that it's basically a chance to hear those reports, continuing discussion if needed, and if there is direction to provide that as an action of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stone. Does any trustees have reports?
Yes, I have a report. Primarily, I'm just looking for when we next. Okay. Are we going to be meeting next on the 20th of February?
I think we're meeting on the 4th Monday of that month.
On the 27th?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I was just wondering. Okay, so I'm going to be meeting with the St. Lucy's art instructor tomorrow after school, and I'm going to contact the Charter Oak art teacher as well to see if perhaps he would be able to attend. But so finally, you know, they have the students all mobilized and they're ready to start planning. So hopefully for February 28th, but I don't know. I will get back to Director Stone, let you know, maybe a crunch time, but you know, have a little like art exhibit, you know, in a little gallery opening, I guess you could call it. Yeah, so it would be not anything hard, not anything too big.
You know, we'd been talking about some other timing as well. So if not February, there might be some other opportunities for that.
Yeah, so I'll have information then for everybody on the 27th.
Okay, we look forward to hearing what new information we'll have next month. Does any other trustees have comments or things to report back? Okay, we will then, there's no action needed for this.
Correct.
Okay, so we can move on to agenda item number 8, new business. Review library fines and fees for submission to the city's master schedule of fees and service for fiscal year 2022-2023. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Good evening again. Feels like I was just here. In your board package, you have the staff report as well as a draft of the master schedule of fees in front of you. And I'm here to provide a little bit of background and additional information, and happy to answer any questions at the end. Next slide, please, Gabby. Next slide. Okay, just some background information. So the city council adopts the master schedule of fees for services annually. And usually part of that, it incorporates the fees recommended by the Board of Library Trustees. And this passes through a municipal fee setting procedure. So there's procedures in place. There has to be public hearings have to be held. And so that will all be handled through the city council. So you will make a recommendation and then that will go to council and they will take a look at it and hopefully incorporate all those recommendations into the master schedule of fees. Next slide, please. So just some additional background information. So at the January 2022 meeting, we did not propose any changes to the fines and fee schedule. At the October 2022 meeting, we did recommend the elimination of the overdue fines, and that was approved by you. And will be part of this recommendation to go forward to council. So the overdue fines would be eliminated starting July 1st of 2023. And we would also, as part of this process forgive any existing past due balances for overdue fines. Next slide, please. So when we look at the master schedule of fees annually, there's a few different things that we look at to make sure that the fees are still in line with the community and everything. So one of the things that we look at is we actually keep files of all the issues that happen throughout the year. So whenever we look at this, we also review our files. We have discussions as a management team to make sure that if there's any issues, we potentially address those if they are, if we can do so with this master schedule of fees. We usually do surveys of surrounding libraries in the area that are similar to us. To kind of see where they're at with their fees. We also look at other departments' fees and kind of see what they have to make sure that we're in line with what other departments are doing. And so that this entire process that we go through to make sure that what we present to you is a thorough document and really looks at everything that needs to be evaluated. Next slide, please. So some of the recommendations that we have in the staff report include clarifications to reduce confusion about expectations, which hopefully will save applicant and staff time in the long run. Of course, the prior board action that was approved by you back in October regarding the overdue fines and also a realignment of our parallel holds charges that we had, which we are proposing to eliminate also. The fee levels should be closer to market average. So this is something that we discovered again during our surveys. And of course, the self-service that we now offer as part of our library document station no longer requires materials or staff time. So that's some of the adjustments that are included in this in the staff report. Next slide, please. So from prior board action, as we have reported in the past, because of the elimination of the overdue fines, our annual revenue will be reduced, and that will be reflected in our 23-24 two-year budget. The existing charges for any overdue fines that we have on the books right now will be waived. And we are estimating that to be about $55,000, covers about the last 5 years of overdue charges. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we would be collecting those $55,000. It's just something that we have sitting on the books. Next slide, please. So the new recommendations that we have in the staff report is we're proposing that we decrease the fee for replacement of lost library cards and the elimination of the unclaimed holds fees. And those decreases should be less than $500 per year. So not too bad overall, and again, in line with prior recommendations and with what other libraries are doing as far as library card replacements. The fees for ongoing faxes and scanning, which is now self-service, we have not tracked those in the past, but they should be minimal, and we are expecting those to be offset by the staff time and us being able to redeploy staff someplace else. Next slide, please. So our recommendation would be that the Board of Trustees approve for consideration by the City Council the library's proposed updates to the City of Glendora's master schedule of fees for service for the fiscal year 23-24. Next slide, please. Oh, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Do any trustees have any questions? No? Okay, so do we have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve, I don't know the word, to approve for consideration by the city council, the library's proposed updates to the City of Glendora's master schedule of fees for service for the fiscal year 2023 to 2024.
Did we have a second?
So second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Vice President Landman, seconded by Trustee Flowers. I will now conduct an oral roll call vote. Trustee Flowers,
Aye.
trustee Johnson,
Aye.
trustee Tolan,
Aye.
vice president Landman,
Aye.
president Chu.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now on to new business, or we're still on new business. Agenda item number 9, review of the role of the Glendora Public Library Board of Trustees document. Director Stone.
Thank you. We have a document called the Role of the Glendora Library Board of Trustees. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And just a couple of quick things about this document. Usually what we use it for is we present it as some additional information when the Board of Trustees is doing goal setting processes or under the situations when we do any reviews of the bylaws. These roles sort of help inform those discussions, and the document itself is reviewed separately from those processes every 2 to 5 years. There's no specific time frame dictated for that. So we are at a time when we thought we would take a look at it. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about how this has gone in the past. In August of 2017, when it was looked at, there was a confirmed subcommittee to assess the roles document. And then the next month, they came back and the possible changes were discussed and were then sent back to the subcommittee for some additional review. And then a couple of months later, the subcommittee presented that revised document and the Board of Trustees approved it. So just as an example of how this process has worked in the past, you are welcome to decide any process you would like. Next slide, please. So in fact, this is what we are recommending, that you review and discuss the document itself, and that you establish whatever process you would like as needed if you choose to update the document. That's our recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions or to turn it over to you for your discussion.
Does anybody have any updates that they would like to make to this document? No? Yeah, I think this document really represents, well, what our roles and responsibilities are, and it also helps us hold each other accountable for our responsibilities and make sure we're doing our job. So I guess, do we need a motion to just keep it as is?
Yeah, you can do receive and file. If you want.
Okay.
If you would choose, if you wanted to actually, there is in the example that's in your packet, there is an approved and adopted. I suppose you could do a motion to do that if you wanted then to update that as if it had been approved and adopted again by this board, if that makes sense, rather than just receiving and filing the document. I think it's up to you how you would choose to proceed.
Any thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that does come to mind is if we want to go through the process of readopting it as a board, we can also change the title of the document from Glendora Library Board of Trustees to the Board of Library Trustees. Library Board of Trustees versus Board of Library Trustees, there's been some question of what we are called. So if we want to align it with the official role, we can change the title and then adopt it as a full document. Thank you.
I am not opposed to that.
Would you care to make a motion for that?
I so move to amend the title of the document to state role of the Glendora Board of Library Trustees for approval.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Perfect. We have a motion made by trustee Flowers, seconded by Vice President Landman. I will now conduct an oral roll call vote. Trustee Flowers.
Aye.
Trustee Johnson.
Aye.
Trustee Tolan.
Aye.
Vice President Landman.
Aye.
President Chu.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now on to agenda item number 10, mid-year review of the Board of Library Trustees goals. Director Stone.
Thank you. Okay, so another piece of your business of governing yourselves, basically. Next slide, please. So we do this annually mid-year, assuming, no pandemic is affecting the meeting schedule. So basically, we try to do this at mid-year, offer you this opportunity. As a reminder, in September of 2022, the board unanimously adopted the existing goals as presented, and they are in the packet. And at mid-year, there's just this opportunity to assess your progress and to plan for the next 6 months as you would choose. Next slide, please. We just ask that you review the status of the goals and take action on any reports or revisions as you deem necessary.
Any trustees have any thing they would like to change about this document? No? Okay, then we approved and adopted this just a few months ago in September. So maybe we just receive and file this one, or
For this one, yes, I think if there were changes, of course, you would want to then adopt it. But if without that, it's really just a chance to report out and assess your progress on them. And if you've done that, then there's no further action necessary.
We're good then. No action needed.
no action needed. Okay. And now, do any trustees or staff have any questions or closing comments? Yes, Erica.
On January 17th, which was Tuesday, 11 to noon, there was a presentation that I totally wanted to view, but I was at work. It's become organized and clutter-free in 2023. And I'm all, that looks awesome, but you had mentioned that they're recorded. Where do I go to go see recorded presentations?
So actually, if you go to the library's website, glendoralibrary.org, on the left-hand navigation, right under the library's event calendar, you'll see the speaker series there. You can click on that, locate the archive session that you'd like to view, and go in and view it from there.
Right, cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, then the meeting is adjourned at 9:19 p.m.